against the referendum, but several of the large influential pharmaceutical companies for a no vote in the referendum. Patients who are palliative are exempt from the drug laws, and they're immune from prosecution. Stress, anxiety, sleep and pain are the top indications.
Hi, it's Brett the Herbalist, and we're back today with another episode of Secrets of Herbal Healing. And today we're exploring cannabis and the controversy around cannabis and the applications of cannabis in New Zealand. And we're going to discuss this with Mike Eyres. And Mike is a fellow medical herbalist, and he's been an associate of mine in a couple of different ways. We worked with him when I was president of the NZAMH. He was my vice president, and I have a lot of admiration for him and the way he communicates and puts things across. He's a fantastic spokesman for herbal medicine, and also has had a lot of background in the advocacy of the use of medicinal cannabis in New Zealand. He also spent a few years on the board for the South Pacific College of Natural Medicine, and currently serves as the new product development agent for Pharmanz, which is where we get our herbal products manufactured. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation, and I really look forward to hearing from Mike about what's going on with medicinal cannabis in New Zealand at the moment. So let's get into it. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for joining us today. It's awesome to get an opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Lovely. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, so we met, probably 3 or 4 years ago at least, when I think you're working with...
Yeah, it might have even been 5 years ago, 2020, I think it was.
Right.
In between lockdowns, I think.
When you started working with Pharmanz?
I think it was, well, I hadn't actually officially started working with them yet. I think it was when we started working on NZAMH committee stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're still with NZAMH committee now?
Yes. Yeah. Still on the committee. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So really interesting area of work, scope of work, I guess, with herbs and herbal medicine and everything around it.
That's right. Yeah. And I work a fair bit in the education side is my main focus. So yeah, we're maintaining the education standards and members doing their ongoing continuing education so that they stay current. So that's sort of my main focus with the committee.
Yeah. And you're also involved with, or have been, South Pacific College, is that correct?
That's right, yeah. So no longer a board member there, but I was a board member for 4 years. Yeah.
Right. It's something we really need in New Zealand, isn't it? Is more availability of education around herbs and herbal medicine. And
We do. We've lost quite a few programs over the years, but there's definitely demand. Yeah, obviously it's tricky navigating the tertiary funding space at the moment for all of the institutions, but yeah, the need is there for sure.
And what inspired you to get involved with herbal medicine in the beginning?
So that's a little bit of a long story. Yeah, if I can go back back to where my exposure to herbal medicine itself and natural medicine and nutrition more widely. So I grew up in a family of food scientists, basically. Both my parents were into food science. So it was pretty normal for us to be talking about, what the foods in our meals were healthy for us and what, active constituents there were in the blueberries we were eating and etc. So that was just pretty normal. And, my grandmother, I was pretty close with her growing up. So she was pretty old school, Irish Catholic. So every time we got colds or flus, it was a tissue with eucalyptus oil under the pillow and horseradish tablets, and that was just sort of normal for us, really.
You're kind of born into it in a way.
Yeah, and then my mum always had a big garden, so I always enjoyed helping her out in the garden, growing her own. Well, it was mostly just vegetables, really, and fruit trees in the garden. But when I was a teenager, I got quite ill. So I got a traveling diarrhea bug that just didn't go away. And I ended up in the lovely hands of an infectious diseases expert in Auckland, who
Yeah.
thought they were doing the right thing, but essentially, probiotics weren't even heard of back then. And so it was chemical warfare for a year or two on my gut to kill these bugs that I'd picked up surfing in the tropics. And that of course destroyed my microbiome and ended up with me developing inflammatory bowel disease. And so I was pretty sick for a couple of years, and eventually working with a GP who was also a Chinese doctor. So from that TCM perspective, and then working with a naturopath, that was really my first introduction to an alternative way of treating a disease that wasn't a drug therapy. And it was pretty remarkable. Within about 3 months, I had gained more health back than I had in 3 years of pharmaceutical therapy.
Right.
So that was a big light bulb moment, and I changed quite a lot of my diet and lifestyle, and just continued working on that track and continued learning. And I was almost to the point where I was, once I graduated with my first degree, I was so interested in it that I had the choice of either go off to America and be a winemaker, or do a master's at Otago in herbal medicine. It would have been full scientific route. I was going to do either ginger or licorice at the time, because they were both really helpful for me at the time, and I was really interested in them. But I ended up deciding to go to America and be a winemaker. Okay. And so my interest in study of herbal medicine got sort of put on the back burner, but I found a really good natural herbal shop where I ended up in the States, and I got to know the owner of the shop really well, and I just kept working on things and doing different things and trying things with myself and learning. But then sort of fast forward about another 10 years to the birth of my two sons, and we worked with a naturopath and a traditional Chinese doctor to have the births of our two sons. And,
great.
Yeah. And it was really exposure through that, and then kind of got a bit burnt out on the wine industry, and went through the global financial crisis. So when we moved back to New Zealand, I made the big decision to get out of the wine industry and go back to study and do my Bachelor of Natural Medicine at South Pacific.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've had a couple of experiences, sort of almost like life-changing experiences with herbal medicine by the sound of it.
Yeah, exactly. That was just really those experiences as a teenager with my own health and my own journey, just really is where I developed that passion and that real drive that this is a real useful thing and can really help a lot of people.
It's interesting, isn't it? I don't know about you, but I've heard a lot of practitioners over the years that have had their own experiences of the medical system not helping them with particular conditions, and then finding that herbal medicine did help. And that's where
I think it's pretty common.
Yeah, sort of like seeing the light, gone down that path.
And I think it also gives you that empathy for your patients as well. Like if you've been just perfectly healthy your whole life, it's a bit hard to relate and empathize when the people come into your clinic when they're really suffering,
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
And I guess that's something with our whole system is it's not really an offer, an option for patients to look at alternatives, is it? So
no, a lot of the time it's not.
So where did cannabis come into your story? How did that?
So that was an interesting one. Definitely part of the personal journey as well. So when I was sort of on the road to recovery, so I was at uni, I was going through the pharmaceutical therapy. I hadn't really worked with the Chinese doctor or the naturopath yet to do that full sort of reset, change my diet fully. But I'd figured out quite a bit myself already. So I was eating quite a simple diet of basically white rice, and chicken and lots of veggies. So I'd sort of just by trial and error found that was sort of very gentle on my gut. And, I was starting uni, and of course you're exposed to going drinking. And I just found that alcohol just was the worst thing for me. It made me feel terrible.
Yeah.
And cannabis offered an interesting alternative to that. So it started off definitely as experimentation and for recreation,
Right.
but I quite quickly found that a lot of my symptoms were getting better. So like cannabis helps with appetite, of course, it's anti-nausea. We now know it's anti-inflammatory. There's now, for IBD, there's meta-analysis of it, for improving quality of life. And me not knowing any of this, and it really, it took me a while to even twig, but yeah, it just found to be that it was medicinal, even though, my friends were all doing it as a recreational thing to do. For me, it became more of a, well, hey, this just improves my quality of life, makes me feel better.
Yeah.
But that was really the limit of my thinking on it at that point. And then it wasn't till, well, living in Oregon as a winemaker, that was at the time when Oregon was going through their medicinal cannabis scheme. So I did have friends accessing that scheme. There was just a general exposure to that. And so I was quite open to the normalization of cannabis as a medicine rather than as a recreational drug. And then once I'd graduated, was working in clinic in Auckland, I was seeing quite a lot of chronic inflammatory conditions, people who were quite sick. And it was really from the patients. They started telling me that they'd gone out to green fairies and had sourced cannabis and that it was really helping them. So that was where I kind of went, oh, I had that experience, 20 years ago. And that really spurred me on to learn more about it and start, at that point it was leading up to the introduction of our medicinal cannabis scheme. So I started attending meetings and trainings with GPs and just learning what I could really. Went from there. So definitely was a patient-led learning journey.
Yeah. Interesting how the United States seems to be quite far down that road now, don't they, with legalizing it? So that they've legalized it in what's 25 states or more or something?
Yeah, I haven't caught up with the latest numbers. It's a lot of states. It's still federally illegal.
Right.
So yeah, like flying into the states, you can't carry your medicinal cannabis.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of states have enacted either a medicinal scheme or decriminalized or fully legalized. So there's a very variability between the states still.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's become pretty normal. Some would say a bit too much in some states. The whole recreational, just go to a shop and walk in and buy a pack of gummies, which have become extremely potent, not particularly medicinal at all anymore, is causing some problems. The same in Canada as well, where I was over there last June, and it was pretty interesting. Even the shop owners, umming and ahhing and wishing they had better access to CBD and hemp products as opposed to these just super potent THC products that really, even for recreational users, are giving people adverse events because it's
just overdosing. Too strong.
Too strong.
I guess that's where because it used to be legal years ago, didn't it? And was it in the 60s when they started using different psychedelic drugs, and maybe there was a bit of abuse and a few concerns around that when the legislation came in and made it illegal?
Yeah, cannabis goes back a little bit further. So, well, in New Zealand anyway. So in New Zealand prior to 1927, cannabis was regularly used as a medicine and used by traditional medicine practitioners as well, and incorporated with rongoa rakau as well.
Oh, wow.
And in 1927, we had our Dangerous Drugs Act, which moved cannabis into a prescription-only product. So then it was still available as a medicine. But yeah, you're right. It was 1961 was when the UN came out with it's called the Single Convention of Narcotic Drugs. And that's where, they moved cannabis and other recreational drugs into the category of no medicinal benefit, only harm, and made them basically illegal. And that was, in New Zealand, it was that point where it became banned.
Right. And then that's sort of downright wrong or untrue, isn't it, in the sense that it's...
Yeah, it's pretty much come to light now that it was a whole lot of hype and was pretty politically motivated and racist motivated, and yeah.
Right.
And then, that was really the start of the war on drugs, which pretty much everyone's accepted that it's failed.
Yeah. It just seems to be getting worse, doesn't it? The illicit drug trade around the world, and in a sense, people are looking for those things that they can use themselves, almost like self-medicate in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So we've since discovered that there is obviously medicinal use, and there's a lot of research going on around that now. Is that...
There is, yeah. There's more coming out all the time. Yeah, definitely a lot coming out of the States, Canada, and the Middle East as well are doing quite a bit of research. So there's really building quite a body of evidence for quite a number of conditions now.
Yeah. So the difference between medicinal use and recreational use, like I know we had the referendum here in New Zealand just a few years ago, and I think it was at 49 were in favour.
49-51.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was for decriminalisation, or...
That was for, it went quite a lot further than decriminalisation. That went for a fully regulated scheme, sort of similar to what's been enacted in the more liberal states in America. So in retrospect, it probably was a bit of a step too far in some ways, which is probably part of why it failed, instead of like a incremental take a little step, take a little step, take a little step. It was sort of a leap to somewhere where New Zealand probably wasn't quite ready for it.
Yeah. I also wonder about, it's probably not much, didn't have much influence on the referendum, but the pharmaceutical drug industry has almost appropriated some herbal medicines or categories in some way. And do you think that's possibly happening a little bit with CBDs, with cannabis products as well?
We definitely know that's the case. We know that the medicinal scheme was already in place before the referendum. There was a lot of lobbying against the referendum by not all, but several of the large influential pharmaceutical companies that had their own pharmaceutical branded medicinal products, which are totally fine. I don't have nothing against those products, but yeah, they did lobby quite hard for a no vote in the referendum, and I think they were quite influential because it's market share, right? They could see, there's profits going down the drain if people can grow their own in their backyard.
Yes, I've often wondered about that because obviously opium poppies is another example, isn't it? They've been sort of banned in a sense. You're not allowed to use them yourself at home or grow them and use them. So
there is a fair bit of higher risk in opium poppies compared to cannabis, but
yeah. But a similar thing, isn't it? The drug companies have a vested interest in suppressing any alternative that might take a market share away from them. Yeah. So what's the angle now for cannabis?
So what's happening now? So not a lot under this government or the previous government. After the referendum, the Labor government pretty much just said it's off the table for the rest of their term. Not a lot happening under this government. We have a few things happening this year in the advocacy space. So there are a couple of live petitions. One in particular I think is quite a smart one because it's been put together by several researchers who are probably really cutting edge, at least in this country, as far as drug law reform. That being Marta Reichert and Fiona Hutton. So they've had input into the petition, and what the petition is, it's on behalf of Pearl Schomburg from Auckland Patients Group, which is a Facebook group that people can follow. It's a petition to extend the exemption that's already in our palliative care clause in the medicinal cannabis scheme.
Okay.
So currently, patients who are palliative are exempt from the drug laws, so they can possess and buy any cannabis, whether it's prescribed or sourced on the illicit market, and they're immune from prosecution. So that's great. But what the petition that's on the board now, that's going to go to Parliament in about just over 2 months' time, is to extend that exemption to the provider for the patient, so that being a family member, possibly even being a clinician, and also the manufacturer of the medicine, so that being probably, if it's from a green fairy, it would cover that green fairy. If they're growing, producing an oil, whatever the activity is, to provide that medicine to a person who's palliative.
Right.
So that's quite a sensible and hopefully a step that is palatable to this government. That will be the next little law change that we'll be hoping for.
So palliative care meaning end of life, like
yes,
you've got some terminal illness and there's really nothing more that the system can offer.
Exactly. Or people going through those sort of pretty harsh cancer treatments, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, that cause horrible side effects, and they're really only going through those therapies to extend their life for a year or so, just so that they can buy a bit of time. But hey, let's also give them the plant medicine they need to relieve their nausea, relieve their pain, help them sleep, give them a bit of appetite, all those sort of benefits that we know cannabis can provide.
Okay, so I'm interested in exploring other options of use cases, like how else can we use cannabis, and what for? What what ailments? What conditions?
There's NZ Drug Trends is a really good website to have a look at. They do reports on what people are using it for. That's
great.
And on who's accessing, who's getting prescriptions, all of that stuff. So they're a really good one to look at. But we know from one of their recent reports that stress, anxiety, sleep, and pain are the top indications. But definitely where I've seen the biggest benefits have been those chronic inflammatory conditions, especially autoimmunity. It seems to be really good for anything like lower pelvic related, so endometriosis, IBD, chronic inflammatory like pelvic pain syndrome in men, even prostate related.
So with those inflammatory pain related conditions, is it better particular dosage form, like not necessarily smoking it, for example?
Yeah, exactly. Well, definitely ingesting. So edible oil would be the primary first product that most people would start trying. But definitely for anything urinary tract related, uterine in nature, gut related, suppositories are definitely an option. And the benefit of suppositories is because it bypasses the liver, you don't actually get high. So there's no real risk of a recreational use, because you kind of feel a bit heavy and sleepy, but you don't get high.
So does it get absorbed through the gut wall, and and
Straight, yeah,
directly into the
directly
blood.
into, yeah, correct,
Right.
and bypasses the liver and the portal vein.
Because you've got receptors all over the place, haven't you, for
Yep,
cannabinoids?
throughout the whole body. Yeah, the endocannabinoid system really is pretty amazing. It's pretty foundational to our health, our inflammatory cascade, just our cellular signaling, just across everything, really. So, yeah, that's why it can be so impactful on a whole body basis. Yeah.
So the cannabinoid receptors are on the nerves, is that correct? On the nervous system?
Pretty much through on all lots of cell types, really.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
they would be in nervous tissue, but also, yeah, mucosal tissue. Yeah, pretty much everywhere. And there's a couple of types. There's CB1 and CB2, and so one of them, CB1, I think it is central nervous system, and CB2 is in the peripheral body.
More peripheral. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting that the body has those cannabinoid receptors. So we must produce a little bit of endogenous, or our body's own cannabinoids.
Yeah. So they're called endocannabinoids. So
Yeah.
endo for endogenous, as you said.
Right.
So anandamide, and there's a whole raft of natural cannabinoids that the body makes itself. And usually those are made from a backbone of omega fatty acids or essential fatty acids.
Right.
And what we know from inflammatory disorders, we know from all the research on omega-3, for instance, when you're in those inflamed states, you need more omega-3 because you're burning through it. And how the body's burning through it is using it as an anti-inflammatory source, right? So cannabis can kind of help alongside that treatment by just topping up, like when you ended up deficient in your endocannabinoids because you've burnt through them, it can help just replace that and nudge the body into a bit more balance.
Right. So the anxiety side of things is an interesting one too.
Yeah.
That must be another indirect pathway somehow, or is it?
Yeah, I don't know if that one's fully known, to be honest. Presumably that's working more on a neurotransmitter level.
Yeah. Because a lot of people think, well, if they've had the experience of smoking cannabis or recreational use, that paranoia is a common symptom, which you kind of think it's like the opposite to anxiety. Well, anti-anxiety, being paranoia.
Yeah, and that is an effective THC with no CBD present. So once the CBD is present, if you've got a more balanced strain, then you're going to possibly have a much better anti-anxiety effect, and with the terpenes as well. So the whole area of terpenes for cannabis is incredibly interesting, and translates to other herbs as well, right? Because we've got, for an anti-anxiety, chemovar might have high linalool, which we know is also a key constituent of lavender, which we also use every day in practice as medical herbalists for calming down, anti-anxiety, sleep support. Yeah.
So in context, just for the listener, there's the terpenes are the oils that we smell. Is that correct?
Yes. They're the volatile, smelly components. Yeah. Correct.
Right.
And there's a whole raft of those in cannabis, and they vary from one. We call them chemovars now rather than strains. It's a more correct term. So it refers to the chemical makeup of that varietal from that you've either cloned or grown from that seed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is there a relationship? Because I know I've heard that these terpenes and even some cannabinoids are available in other plants like mint, the mint family, for example.
Yep. All those culinary herbs, thyme, rosemary, lavender we already mentioned, black pepper, all those pungent spices and herbs will have some terpene content. Yeah, absolutely. So like pinene is one that's in like more stimulating cannabis varieties, but it's also from pine. It's also probably present in rosemary, which we would use as a bit of a cognitive enhancer if you're making a fresh rosemary tea, for example.
Yeah. So I guess there's a whole family of herbs there that have those calming, relaxing, sort of anti-anxiety effects as well, but on a much more mild effect.
Yeah, they tend to be more mild without the cannabinoids to back them up. The cannabinoids are fairly potent constituents in our herbal world, I think, compared to some of our ones that we would use every day.
So going back to, I guess, we started down the pathway of use cases, and how can we apply cannabis as a medicine in New Zealand under the current environment? What's available now? What can we do?
Yeah, so the medicinal scheme is working. It's up and running. We do know from some of Marta's work, she's released a paper, and there's a drug trend poster for it. So prescriptions are way up. The price has come down quite significantly. So it is more available than ever. And there's oils. There's also dried flower available now that there wasn't until sort of about 18 months ago. That was unavailable. So there's now approved vaporizers and dried flower. There's a range of things of CBD only, all the way up to THC only, quite potent varieties. So it's good. But also Marta's work identified that there are still really significant gaps and inequalities in the prescribing. So when we look at the demographics and the maps of where those prescriptions are coming from, if you're relatively well off and you're probably white-skinned and you're seeing your happy, friendly GP, you can get a prescription quite easily. Or if you're going to spend the extra money to go directly to a cannabis clinic, you can get a prescription quite easily. Okay. If you're from a lower socioeconomic area or background, or you're probably going to have a bit of a tougher time, which is pretty sad to see, and needs to be addressed. We need to get better access, more equitable access across the country.
So there's possibly a little bit of socioeconomic, race-based judgment going on there with the prescribing.
Yeah, and whether it's judgment or whether it's stigma, stopping people from even asking in the first place, I don't think we have those answers. Right. It might be a bit of both.
Probably. Yeah. Possibly. Yeah. And I guess it's still in the early days as well. So it's maybe a little bit about who you know, what you know, and where you're located and how available it is.
And probably a bit of trust as well. So that's still, I think, at the moment, trust in our regular health system is probably at an all-time low. So people are still accessing cannabis elsewhere rather than through the public healthcare system.
Right. It does seem that there's been a little bit of a step back from the enforcement of the law as far as personal use and that sort of thing going on. Is that getting better or worse?
Personal level, it is, but we're still seeing prosecutions of green fairies. The Gandalf story is in the media at the moment. An amazing green fairy in Northland who pretty much, he doesn't grow anything for recreational purposes. He doesn't grow for gangs. He doesn't grow for profit. Only grows for medicinal purposes. And he's been busted, and he's just in the system waiting for a trial. And they keep kicking the can down the road, which is pretty shameful, really. And we're still seeing prosecutions of or destruction of plants that have been grown by green fairies out in the wild. Especially in more rural areas. People still feel pretty harassed out in East Cape and Northland by police and by helicopters, and even if they're a licensed grower, they still get tormented. So things are getting better, but there's still a long way to go.
It's a real shame, isn't it? You'd think that after such a close referendum, they know half the people in New Zealand want it decriminalised or legalised. And
yeah. And the most recent data is it's probably closer to about 60% would say yes now.
right, yeah. And also, there's far worse recreational drugs out there, isn't there? Sort of
Oh yeah,
all over the place.
and there's including alcohol and tobacco. Yeah, which are
Exactly.
socially accepted and cause far more harm than cannabis does. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they outlawed cannabis because it's got no benefit, only harm, then why are we still selling alcohol?
Everywhere.
To everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
right.
vape shops seem to be on every corner now too, which is it's got to be worse than
with almost no regulation. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll drop a whole bunch of links in below the video to access where people can sign a
find
petition.
some more information. We'll put a link to the petition. I'll put a link to the drug trends, which are Marta's great work that she's doing there from Massey University, and maybe a couple of other sort of associations that are doing the political law change advocacy piece at the moment.
Yeah. And you're in your research role still at Pharmanz?
Yes, I'm NPD manager here, developing new products, trying to create a healthier world by helping our customers make great products that actually work and go out to people. Yep.
Yeah. Oh well, we're looking forward to working with you further on products coming up soon. So
excellent.
I'm sure we'll be seeing more of you in the future.
Brilliant. Sounds good.
So maybe one day we'll have some cannabis products that are available in the market through natural suppliers as well, hopefully.
Yeah, we hope so. I mean, that would definitely be one option. Australia's already down-regulated CBD to be pharmacy only. There would only be one more step down to, put it into that sort of dietary supplement category, which is this case in the UK and in some states in America. So that's sort of the direction we want to go. At least we can get CBD across the line as a dietary supplement. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. So in the UK, they've got natural health practitioners able to prescribe it.
Yeah. Well, it's even in supermarkets.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
That's great.
It's in like just over-the-counter food and beverage products, so long as it's only CBD.
Right. No THC.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Interesting. So in the meantime, if you're suffering with one of those conditions, you could find a doctor somewhere that might be able to help.
Yeah, I would recommend finding a couple of research articles, which is pretty easy these days with help of AI, pull that together. Anyone can do that. And take that to your GP in the first instance. If your GP is uncomfortable, a lot of them don't feel comfortable prescribing just from a lack of knowledge, then get their nod of approval to seek one of the specialist clinics. So one of the cannabis clinics that are around, they all do Zoom calls. They're pretty affordable now. They started off being really expensive, but and they're quick and easy. They are trained GPs who will check your safety considerations, go through any of the contraindications with you, check your other medicines you're on, all of that safety stuff, and then they will send you a prescription. And then you can either fill it with them, or you can go back to your GP and your regular pharmacy and fill it through them. So it's a little bit of a back and forth process. MCANS is one of the links I'll put in. They're a volunteer organisation that really helps patients navigate the public system.
Okay, great.
So they're a really good resource.
Fantastic. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interest in the subject, and we're looking forward to see what happens in the future. I think it's exciting times, really, isn't it?
It is. Definitely. Yeah, and really, with a bit of luck, it'll open people's eyes a bit more to the wider world of herbal medicine, and people will sort of see medical herbalists as a more viable option to go and see for their primary healthcare.
Yeah, it does make you think. A lot of people look at herbal medicine as I don't know if it's that trustworthy or effective or well researched. I think it's hugely underestimated, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is only one plant we're talking about, and there's 300,000 or something that are used.
So many.
Yeah.
Even if you expand it to our regulars of a couple of hundred, I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of options there, and
Yeah.
I really think once people who are finding cannabis useful tend to be the ones who've had bad reactions from pharmaceuticals, and I'm a big believer in that, combining cannabis prescription with a personalized herbal program, can only be more beneficial as well.
Right. Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks so much for your time today. It's been really interesting, and I've learned a lot.
Yeah, cool.
So
Thanks, Brett.
It's been really great to share this with everybody. And I'm sure we'll find another rabbit hole to go down another time. Have another
There's plenty.
Yeah, sure there is. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thanks so much, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Brett.
Wonderful talking to you.
Yeah, cheers.